the question arises only in relationship with becoming. And enlightenment is also becoming, you see. So I would go one step further and say that the human mind, if I may use that word, quote and unquote, is interested only in sensual activity. You know, the living organism or the human body or whatever you want to call it is only responding to the stimuli. It is not interested in pleasure at all. See, the moment you use thought to experience anything in terms of pleasure, it becomes a pain for this body.
And yet we pursue sensuality and yet find only pain in it.
But we love pain, in other words,
We love
and we
pain.
enjoy pain and call it pleasure. You see, the human body is not interested in pleasure of any kind. It is only interested in maintaining the sensitivity of the nervous system and the sensitivity of the functioning of the body. So the moment you say a particular sensation is a pleasurable sensation, the demand to make it last longer goes with it. So then the demand to make the pleasure last longer turns what we call pleasure into pain, and that's a painful sensation to the body. The body is trying to be rid of that pleasurable sensation, and what we are stuck with is pain.
It almost sounds as if the greater the pleasure, then the greater the pain must be.
We have introduced the degree into that what is called pleasure, you see, because the thought is always interested in more and more of something and less of the other. I am not saying anything against pleasure. See, the moment you use thought as an instrument to have pleasure, we have there created a problem. Since man has realized, since I don't like to use the word man or a human being or in general terms, the average man, see, that man is you and I sitting here. So since this demand for permanent happiness is something which cannot be achieved through anything, any thinking that is open to us, we have projected and created what is called enlightenment, God, self-realization, call it by whatever name you like. So that is the ultimate pleasure.
There are stories out of India, you've probably heard, of great saints who are supposedly in states of perpetual sexual orgasm.
That is what these gurus are selling in the marketplace today. You see, even sex is something that the body does not care for. It's a painful thing, and that is necessary for only one purpose, to reproduce one like that. The living organism is interested only two things: it's a survival and then it's a reproduction. So when once the thought is involved in turning sex into pleasure, we have created a problem. It is the same thought that makes you feel that, you see, the pleasure, you see, can be extended into one of degree, into longer and longer time, and then, you see, keep it going, and so it is more painful to this body.
You almost sound Victorian in your approach here.
I am not Victorian. This sex is totally unrelated to the question of enlightenment. You see, whether it has become fashionable these days for all these people to market sex as the means or the stepping stones to enlightenment. But actually and factually, the sex is totally unrelated to what is called enlightenment. Whether you deny yourself sex or indulge in sex, it is of no importance to what you are searching for. But in a culture where, you see, the denial of sex is maintained as a sine qua non or an essential thing for your spiritual goal, unfortunately, the gurus in the marketplace who are selling that enlightenment invented this thing called this tantric experience and used that as a means to achieve your spiritual goal.
Right, it's either tantric here or abstinence there, and what you're saying
Both
is
are the same. They are totally unrelated to the question of enlightenment. When once, you see, the question of enlightenment or the demand for an enlightenment is freed from sex totally, either as a means to it or the denial of it as a means to it, we can look at it in a different way and ask the question, is there any such thing as enlightenment at all? We have accepted taken for granted that there is such a thing as enlightenment, but we never questioned that, because when once you question the whole idea of enlightenment, or as you put it, the concept of enlightenment, we are questioning the teachers who have talked about it, and we have invested our tremendous faith in them. So the sentiment comes into the picture, and we accept that as a gospel truth.
Well, yes, we have this notion of the great sages of antiquity in many different cultures have written and talked about higher states of consciousness and enlightenment.
That is true, but I am questioning the very consciousness itself. Is there any such thing as consciousness? That is my question. So you become conscious of yourself and the world around you only through the help of the knowledge that is given to us by these so-called sages, saints and saviors of mankind. So is it possible for you to be conscious of anything without the help of that knowledge? So we have to question the very thing that we have taken for granted. We are very naive and to accept it, and then you see spend the whole lifetime in search of whatever you want to have it, enlightenment, God realization, self-realization, or what you have.
In other words, it seems as if there's a paradox here, because on the one hand, our consciousness, it seems as if it leads us to question the tradition, the so-called truths that are handed down to us, and you're saying, but without that tradition, without those truths, we would have no consciousness.
You know, that is part of the structure of our thinking. You see, unfortunately, the thought has divided itself into two, and created, you see, this duality or the neurotic situation for us. The whole culture teaches us that you should not compete. Competition is to be eschewed. Ambition is something which you should not, you see, have.
Spiritual teachings tend to say this.
Spiritual teachings, yes, always.
I mean, certainly in athletics and in capitalism, there is this sense of
demand
competition.
that you should be free from ambition, you should be free from greed, you should be free from this, that and the other. But at the same time, ambition is absolutely necessary for survival in the society in which we are functioning today. So it is that has created the neurotic situation for us. We want pleasure, and at the same time we know that the pleasure is giving us pain. So the demand for permanence is the basic demand of thought. You see, it is interested in permanence. The permanence not of this living organism, but the permanence of the continuity of thought. So the body knows in a way that it is permanent. You see, not in the sense in which we know that this is permanent, that is not permanent, but that knowledge is of a peculiar kind that it knows it is permanent. So it is not interested in the idea that this is coming to an end one day, you see. So the one that is involved in this pleasure movement is the one that is asking the question, what will happen to this living organism when it dies? You see, for the body there is no such thing as death at all. So because it has no way of experiencing the fact that it is alive at this moment and that it is dead after 60, 70, 80 or 100 years at all.
Are you saying then that the body doesn't die, but what about the spirit?
That is the belief, the self, the soul, the spirit, and whatever you want to call it is invented by thought. And it is that thought that is responsible for experiencing this, what we call thought, because what you call self, spirit or soul or whatever you want to call. I don't want to indulge in the frivolity of the root meaning of the words. You see, you know, the Latin word, spirit is a Latin word.
They have to do with breathing generally.
It means breathing. So you have observed, you see, a certain individual stop breathing, and that condition you described it as death. So the fact that you see the breathing stop, you want to know if there is anything that will continue after death. You see, it is that is interested in demanding to know what will survive this condition of the body which is called death.
Yeah. I mean, I would tend to think that my body will not survive. My body will decay, but perhaps my ability to experience at some level will survive.
But can you experience your body while you are living now? You see, if one wants to know anything about death, he has to find out what is it that is there now and not wait until what we call the death takes place. So, do you have any way of experiencing the fact that you are alive today? I say no.
Oh.
You see, the doctor comes and examines you and tells you that this is your blood pressure, this is the temperature for your body, your heart is breathing, your blood pressure, so on and so forth. So, you are alive. So, you are trying to use that knowledge and experience what you call a living being. But without the help of that knowledge, which is passed on to us by observation of all these doctors, and experience and tell yourself that you are a living being. So, when once you are freed from the knowledge, you have no way of experiencing that you are alive today, and there is no question of experiencing when you are dead. I am giving the talk.
Well, Descartes, a great Western philosopher, said, "I think, therefore I am." And you seem to be suggesting that thinking is the opposite of living.
I think that Descartes, I studied Western philosophy, and he asked a wrong question and answered it in a very funny way. We think, I think, therefore I am. But he never asked the question which he should have asked, the way the Indian philosophers did. If you don't think, are you there? So, the basic question which we have to ask is, what is thinking and why do we think at all? If you don't think, there is still the question there, you see. The question is born out of the assumption that there is something there, and so that is why he has come out with this statement, I think, therefore I am. If you don't think, where is that I am?
Well, isn't it true that when we talk of enlightenment, the great sages of India have said when you stop thinking, you can enter into this vast ocean of bliss, and that's enlightenment.
The bliss is the bliss, or whatever you want to call it, is essential pleasure that we are indulging in. They may have experienced some extraordinary moment which he described it as a bliss and tried to share it with us, and that created the problem of us all trying to experience the same thing. So, that is the way the knowledge is passed on from generation to generation. That is the way you are also experiencing things. Without knowledge, you have no way of experiencing anything at all. And when once you experience, that experience strengthens and fortifies the knowledge. So, this vicious circle goes on and on and on and on, and that structure has no way of breaking through that, you see, vicious circle. So, we accept that knowledge is necessary for us to experience, and the experience strengthens the knowledge. So, do we really want, you see, to find out or demand the way out of it, you see?
Yes. How is there a way out?
And there is no way out, because the question is posed by the thought, and by asking this question, the thought knows that it has no answer.